This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's pod. This is a show for the week of April 17th, 2023. This week we're going to take a deeper dive into Bob Iger's statement about investing $17 billion into Walt Disney World over the next 10 years and how that could connect to some blue sky project announced at D23. And this is basically triggered by a couple different Disney content creators going on about Beyond Thunder Mountain and potentially stuff with Tiana. And think, okay, well, if these people are talking about it, they've heard rumblings. There's been rumblings all over the place. Yeah. So this might be culminating in a thing.
We're just trying to put it all together.
That's it. Yes, that's our job. Plus, our takes on trip reports and our top 3 reasons Disney should not add a fifth gate. And the DBC engagement designing a throwback event at Walt Disney World, which I incredibly struggled with. And you're going to see why later on. But first, let's talk about what's going on in our Disney World. And take it away, Phil.
Yeah, so there was quite a bit of news. Again, we're going to kind of skip over all the craziness that's been going on between Reedy Creek and DeSantis and stuff like that, because nothing good can come from us discussing that. But outside of that, there's actually been a lot of sort of small positive things that I wanted to sort of group together and kind of keep the positivity going. The first one, and it's personally positive for us because we were looking forward to this returning, is that they announced that breakfast will be returning to the Garden Grill starting on June 14th. That is over in the Land Pavilion in Epcot. To give some context, the price for the breakfast is $42 for adults, $27 for kids. That is compared to the lunch or dinner, which is $55 for adults, $36 for kids. So you're saving about $13 an adult if you do the breakfast versus the lunch or dinner. And you still get the character interactions and the restaurant still rotates and all those good things. So we're penciling that in for doing that for our August trip. My oldest wanted to do Garden Grill anyway, so I think we're going to try to do the breakfast. I'm not going to go through the full menu, but one thing we noticed is when they had breakfast before, they used to serve this big, giant, like skillet cinnamon roll thing. And now they're going to have cinnamon breakfast loaf, which looks a lot like the cinnamon bread that they have at Dollywood, for anyone who's familiar with that.
Okay.
Just wondering how that goes over, because a lot of people liked the big giant cinnamon roll. So
oh my God, change.
Is this going to be the Ohana Noodles Noodle Gate or whatever? Like we have
the answer is always yes. There will be drama.
But so we'll see how that goes. There's Earth Week is going on, I guess, now. This is Earth Month, and the anniversary of Animal Kingdom is coming up. And in honor of that, they're doing a lot of little things over at Animal Kingdom, including a number of rare characters that are being out. And I guess they're kind of rotating who's out what day. So recently they've seen Tinkerbell and Fern, various fairies. The Baloo is out doing meet and greets.
Let me chime in real quick. Yeah. I was scrolling through Twitter and Tinkerbell and Fern popped up, and my oldest daughter went, "Ooh, look at that!" So like, it's still, she was never into the whole. She was a little bit too young. I don't even know if she was born yet when the whole fairy revolution,
like when that big craze came out.
Yeah. But it still perked up her interest when she saw Tinkerbell and some other fairies. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yep, and they've also
resonate. I'm just going to say it's good. No, the only thing, it resonates with young kids, regardless of the shows and the books and everything else that went by.
I think there's enough content with them around, and everyone knows who Tinkerbell is. So when you see, I don't know, fairies with the wings and stuff like that,
it's fun.
It's exciting. Yeah. They've also had Jane and Turk from Tarzan were out. Coda and Kenai from Brother Bear were on the flotillas. And then this is something I don't know if they've ever done this before, but they've had that character Divine, who is out, who's that person that's on like kind of stilts and has all the ivy wrapped around her. So she kind of hides in the bushes and you can kind of see her move and stuff like that. But they added all these flowers to her, and it's like a blooming Divine version of her. And it's kind of like, everyone's like, I've never seen that before. Is that new, or did we just never see that? So that's kind of cool that they introduced that. Other character news, they've introduced the 100th anniversary costumes are now at Walt Disney World. They've been spotted in the character caravan, which goes around unannounced to various resorts. We also saw the premium ice cream bars. Their packaging has been updated for the 100th. And then we've been seeing the 100th sign has been out in front of all of the parks. That's created a little bit of discussion because it's very like sort of modern and sleek looking. So it probably looks fine at Epcot, but when you see it in front of like Magic Kingdom or Animal Kingdom, it kind of looks a little out of place. But it is what it is. It's a temporary sign for the anniversary.
I don't care. I mean, it's whatever. I mean, does it fit in front of? I saw the picture at Animal Kingdom and people commenting on. I mean, would it be my choice? No, but walk past it and go into the parks.
Exactly.
It's like whatever. But I also don't care about the costumes either for the characters. It's just like you said that they were. I didn't catch this. You said they're going to hotels and stuff like that. Or some
well, at
resorts?
least so for now, the report has been around that there's the character caravan, which is periodically goes around and it just randomly will show up at different resorts completely unannounced, and some characters will get out and do meet and greets at the resort. And recently, it was spotted. The van itself is all like redone up in 100th anniversary color scheme, and then the characters that came out had the costumes and stuff.
Because I remember them doing this. Was it pre-pandemic or like? I know they do this like when people are like stuck in hotels because of weather and like hurricanes and stuff like that. But I think this just kind of popped in my head. Why don't they do these type of things at resorts more often? Because you're paying a premium for Disney resorts. Shouldn't some really cool entertainment, come your way other than just having like a average room and a bus access to the parks, which is basically the resorts? I think it's a good idea. More of it.
And last little note was, I guess there's been some rumors or teasing that they might be adding more performers to the Festival of Fantasy Parade. You might recall when it came back, there's a lot of reports about how there wasn't as many dancers and stuff like that. There was, I guess there's like audition calls for performers to come back. And it mentioned Festival of Fantasy, but it also mentioned it could be for the Halloween parade and stuff like that. So we're not exactly sure, but worst case scenario, they're auditioning for more entertainers. So that's, I think, a good thing to bring more entertainment to the parks.
By the way, if you're just listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, we have a DBC pod first. Both of us are in collared shirts today. Just want to make that professional. Yes, we are a professional crew.
This is a very serious episode. Very important.
Tiana's Bayou Adventure updates.
Yeah, so this is the next topic I want to talk about. Quite a few updates were announced for this. First one is that the attraction will close at Disneyland starting May 31st. So May 30th is the last chance to ride the Splash Mountain version of this attraction at Disneyland. If you want to ride it after that, you'll have to go over to Japan. They still have, they're still on record as saying it'll open in 2024 at both Disneyland and Walt Disney World. And then Disney also shared some more artwork for another scene that will be in the attraction. This is featuring Mama Odie in kind of a scene where she's standing there with vines around her, and there's a lot of like colored bottles and things kind of hanging from the ceiling, and it looks really, really colorful and stuff like that. They also gave just a bunch of little details. They said there's going to be a new cast of characters that'll all have distinct names and personalities, but also a lot of returning characters. They said dozens, with an S, of entirely new audio animatronic figures, which I think that's the part that everyone is very excited to see. That I think people were a little fearful that they might do something like Navi River, where it's more screens and things like that, and then one cool animatronic at the end. It sounds like they're going to have quite a few audio animatronics in this. Adorable critters. They're going to have new original music, but also returning favorites from the film. So before, they'd only really mentioned about the new music inspired by the film, but it seems like they'll be bringing back at least some, songs actually from the movie. This part I thought was interesting. They're going to have the alluring scent of beignets being prepared for the party and will be part of the attraction queue. So it sounds like they're going to be piping in beignet smells into the queue to make you hungry while you're in line to wait.
I love it.
Which makes me feel they have to have a stand then or something to sell them. They can't be pumping in the scent and then not.
Well, that's true. I mean, to me, it just goes to show that they are not just putting a ride together; like they're creating an atmosphere around it, which is always good. I mean, when you create not only sights and sounds but smells, you're truly looking at a pretty good experience. I like how they're adding new songs. I like that. So there's budgeting. They're not just like, it's not like a Frozen Ever After where we're just going to play the hits and make a show around that. They're building content for it, which is good. Because I think they're also, obviously, they're going to be supporting additional Tiana content to come after this. So I think that's a big part of it. I think, a lot of people scream about, I hate shoehorning IP into the parks, but they're actively taking an old IP and creating new IP out of it to support new stories that aren't the movie, which I think is kind of a middle ground between just like shoehorning the movies into rides type of thing. So I'm all for that.
And they also said that a lot of the voice talent that was in the movie will be returning to voice the lines for the characters in this. And they mentioned familiar faces such as Princess Tiana, Prince Naveen, Mama Odie, Louis Eudora, Charlotte, Big Daddy, the King and Queen of Maldonia, and Prince Ralphie. Now, the one you obviously don't hear listed is Dr. Facilier, who I guess, because this is supposed to come after the movie, and he was, I guess, spoiler alert, defeated in the movie. So
Right.
I guess it makes sense for him not to be there, but I think he's a really cool character, and I think a lot of people were sort of armchair imagineering, like, well, where could like he fit into the attraction and the drop and stuff like that, but it seems like that's not the route they're going to go.
No, which is fine. I mean, I don't think you have to like people claim that they don't want IP in the rides, but now they're demanding like IP from the movies in the rides, right? I mean,
Right.
Disney could never win, so they should just
Exactly.
be creative, go with what they think is best. I trust them, and it should be a good attraction.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with what you're saying, that like they need to develop the story, and some of the things they put out there before sounded a little weak around the salt mine and stuff like that, but I think they're getting there with what the actual storyline of the actual attraction is going to be, and they're building, like you said, they're creating content for what the attraction will be rather than forcing things into it. Is what it sounds like. And I also saw some rumors that the budget has been increased for this versus the original amount. So it certainly sounds like Disney wants to do this the right way, and they're not just doing a quick overlay or quick and cheap overlay. And we'll be covering this a little bit more later on when we get into sort of how we think projects are going to develop around that area.
Just the other side of our takes, right? We're gonna really dive deep into it, and we've talked about some of the things we talked about before, but we're gonna kind of, I don't know, maybe put it in perspective potentially. So we'll see. Okay, so our takes this week was trip reports, right? So what's overrated, properly rated, or underrated about trip reports? And this is basically from our point of view of creating them ourselves and putting them out there, whether it's just talking about them on Discord, making actual like a formal post, or going even crazy in creating like 4 hours of video content for my personal YouTube channel for private use. Okay, so we're gonna start with overrated. My overrated part of trip reports is putting them together, and people think like, oh my goodness, you did so much work, you put this together. It's, for me personally, I put the videos together, and everybody's like, wow, you did such a great job with that. Must have been a lot of editing. That's a lot of work, and kind of praising me for like putting something together. That part of it, that's what I'm talking about, is overrated. I don't need praise for the complexity. I put it together so I have this video. It's first cathartic to me after your post Disney vacation depression, right? You're at home, like vacation's over, you don't have another trip planned for X amount of time, but I mean the work is the work, but it's the results that really matter. But a lot of people tend to think, oh, you're creating a trip report to either brag or show off something, and to me that's the overrated process. It's more of a personal journey for me when I make these things, and my obviously having an account of my family vacation for personal use is always fun. So what is your overrated part of trip report?
Mine's a little bit.
Go ahead.
It's kind of related to what you said, but my thought was how, if going into the trip you're going to be doing a trip report after, thinking about that during the trip and making sure you're like, oh, I got to get enough like footage of this, or I got to like maybe take some notes of this to keep track of things, or even just making sure I take a photo of like everything we do so I know the order we did things in and stuff like that. So kind of having to keep in mind doing the trip report while you're doing the trip, to me, is overrated. It kind of takes away from being in the moment. Yeah,
I did this for both of my trips last year. I know we both kind of, I think one of our trip reports is actually on our own DBC channel. Did I put it up there? I don't remember. And in any case, I have like a note of like every time I go on an attraction, I note the time that I go on and where I go and stuff like that. I kind of enjoy doing that a little bit. But yeah, like with my family, I started off the first couple of days doing that, and then I'm like, I have a 4-hour window. I have no notes. What did I was doing? Oh wait, I was having fun and I forgot to take down notes. So yeah, it's definitely like, to me personally, tell me if this is how you felt. You start off by taking notes because you're a OCD planner, right? You made the plan, you want record of the plan, but then you start panicking like, oh, what am I missing? What am I missing? And then finally you just have to kind of let go. You find your vacation, right? I'm assuming that's what you're going at.
Exactly. And yeah, there's sometimes where I remember doing some of these or trying to fill in the gaps where it's like, okay, I know we did this and then we ate. There was like 2 hours in there. We definitely did other stuff. What was that
Things
stuff? And
happened.
like, yeah, exactly. And trying to keep track of what it was. So yeah.
And I think our properly rated one, we share them. We share the sharing of our stories. Our properly rated part of trip reports. I actively, I try to read every trip report that's on Discord. Some of them I skim, some of them I read directly, some of them I go back like 3 months later and reread again, type of stuff. Especially when they're well put together, well formatted. So a note to everybody out there: for me personally, I like a good trip report when the format is crisp. When somebody goes on like all like one giant paragraph for your whole trip, like put some paragraphs in there, brother, please. This is not, I'm not calling anybody out. Anyway, a nice properly, like you could tell by the trip report we did last week, where it's like you got to have a nice format so you can get a nice flow. You can kind of set a base together of the story. I really love doing that. And one of the things I like about sharing my story is I like the sharing the moments and the memories, right? That's always fun and cathartic, at least with your family and extended family. You're kind of showing your home videos too. That's basically what it is. But I like reading other people's trip reports when I haven't been in a while, so you can get a little taste of the magic, right? That's always fun. But also, like, I learn from them. I'm like, oh, I never thought about eating here or going here or doing it in this particular order. So I like learning about other people's traditions and whether or not I want to steal them from my own family because they're good ideas.
Yeah.
What do you like best about sharing?
Yeah, I think it's similar to that. I was especially thinking of sharing, especially if we do like a video or something like that, sharing it with like family and friends. I know we're, my mom doesn't usually come with us, but being able for her to then, like, if I put up on Facebook or whatever, for her to see the video I put together and see the kids in Disney, her grandkids in Disney World and stuff like that, I think is kind of, you feel like the rewards of the effort of putting everything together is when other people appreciate what you did. And so the ability to, it's great that we have this medium, right? How relatively easy it is to put together, whether it's a trip report, whether it's talking about it on a podcast, whether it's a video.
Yep.
You didn't have that like 10, 15 years ago. Maybe you had like some old school VHS camera or something like that, but it's not quite the same as like, you can put together fairly slick YouTube videos now. So it's nice to have that. And, I even looked at not too long ago, I don't know why but we started looking up videos I made from like 6-7 years ago when the kids were really little, and it was kind of just, even for us, it's fun to see them when they were that little and kind of the things they were into, what they were excited about then and stuff like that. So yeah, I think sharing with anybody who cares about trip reports for sure, but I think specifically sharing about, with friends and families of you, and especially of the kids, I think is a neat aspect of it.
To kind of go right off that, go right into underrated aspect. I'm going to add one to my list. The underrated thing is like when, pre-COVID, our last trip, we went down with my mother. So it was the 6 of us, and she did not go with us this last trip back in December. However, one of the underrated aspects of this, so when you're back at home, you're like, hey, do you want to see the video or watch it again for the second time after not seeing it for, since Christmas, so like 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It's really cool. It turns into like a kind of boring Wednesday if my mom's staying here to like now we're sitting around having a glass of wine watching Disney videos, and then it leads to talking about Disney at home and potentially planning your next trip because you're so nostalgic. So one of the underrated aspects of it is you could turn a pretty drab like what's on TV night to a planning night or a reminiscing night. So it kind of really triggers, like, just like you said, looking at past pictures of past movies. My other underrated one is using them as tips and tricks for others. There's I had one family member and another friend of ours ask about like, oh, so how do you use Genie Plus? What do you do? It's like, well, funny that you ask. And I sent the video of when we did 4 parks in one day with the wife and I. Somebody asked like, how do you do all this stuff? And I'm like, here, go watch this 15-minute video of what we did that whole day. And you could use it as like a live version or a minute by minute version of like, how to use Genie Plus, how to plan your day. Because I remember before I used Genie Plus for the first time, I was wondering like, how does it work? How do you plan each window? And there's nobody there that just kind of does a day at a park that executes it properly to kind of get you prepared for it. It's kind of like, oh, you just go on your phone and you book the next one. Well, I know that, but how does it actually work from the minute by minute? Because just like you and I were paranoid about actually getting your first and second one of the day, right? And so there was nobody there like showing me that. That kind of video kind of helps that. What's your underrated trip report take?
Yeah, I think I probably talked about it more with my properly rated, but the whole reliving your trip, like I said, we were watching videos from 5-6 years ago and just having that available. I think that's underrated. It's a lot of work in the moment, and then it kind of feels like, okay, we did it, we got it out, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, now it's done or whatever, and everybody who wants to see it has seen it. But you don't like always think about that you're going to want to look at it again in 5-6 years or whatever. And I guess it's the same thing how people used to go through slideshows or photos or whatever like that. But now this is, I think, a little bit a more fun way, and kind of not that
It's
you
more
can't
produced.
do that, not that you can't do it for other types of trips, but it seems like they're a little bit unique to Disney, like the full on trip reports like this. So I think it's kind of a cool thing about that for looking back on your Disney trip. And like you said, you could share with people that are maybe thinking about doing a trip or something like that. Be like, here's some things we experienced. What do you guys think? Like that type of thing. So.
You can't quite do like a trip report or a video of like your summer vacation at the beach, right? It's like a lot of video of just watching the waves or making hamburgers back at your house or something else like that. So there is something unique about Disney because you're actively doing something like 16 hours out of the day.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes a good story. All right. So before we get to Phil's, how far can $17 billion go? He did an excellent job doing a lot of research. I see the 1,000 pages of show notes in front of me. But first, just a reminder about our social media, Twitter at the DBC Pod, Instagram, Facebook, and our YouTube channel. Make sure if you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button below. Even if you're on your phone, rotate it around, get it at full screen mode, and leave a comment. We need comments on our thing. It helps the algorithm at YouTube kind of promoting our stuff. So we appreciate everything else. And of course, Discord. Get on Discord, start participating. Maybe your idea will pop on the show because we steal ideas from people all the time because they're good ones. So no shame in that. All right. So Phil Iger said he wants to spend $17 billion at Walt Disney World. And I think you're going to lay the prefaces. And the only thing I want to point out, because it's in like your third paragraph here, is Len Tessa went back and looked at it, and I have a comment. So once you get to that point,
okay,
I want to stick at that point for a second.
All right, sounds good. Yeah. So at the last shareholders meeting, Bob Iger, this is tied into the whole DeSantis thing and stuff like that. But he was trying to say, like, look how Disney's good for Florida, and we're planning to spend, he said, $17 billion over the next 10 years at Walt Disney World and bring 13,000 new jobs to the area. So everyone's like, whoa, that's a big number. Like, that sounds great. That's a lot of money. And then we're kind of thinking, okay, well, what could that actually, quote unquote, buy? What is like realistic to be built at Walt Disney World in Florida with that budget? Is that 5 new theme parks? Is that, 1 new ride? Like, how much does $17
What do you
billion
get for all that money?
Yeah. And then I was trying to think, well, we kind of already have some ideas of what they're thinking of doing with what was presented as those blue sky ideas at D23. So like, how could that fit into, like, could 17 billion buy that? Or is that not even, is that half of it, or what? Like, how does things fit? So first thing first is everyone's like, okay, well, 17 billion over the next 10 years. What is that per year? And that sort of thing. So Len Tessa, as I mentioned on the Daily Dish, talked about this a little bit. And of course you have to factor in inflation. So 17 billion over the next 10 years is closer to 14 billion in today's dollars. So we've already lost 3 billion. And it comes out, so, about 1.4 billion a year. And then they also looked back and they kind of looked at, they don't say we spent X at Disney World this year and X at, but they say, here's how much we spent in the theme parks.
Domestic CapEx,
which I think also includes the cruise lines. They kind of cut things out and they basically made some approximations and said, basically their best estimate is they've spent about 14 billion or so, or about 1.4 billion on average over the last 10 years. So if we kind of look at that, you can kind of say what they built, the amount that was done over the last 10 years could theoretically be done in the next 10 years for what Iger said they're planning to spend.
Now, here's my thing. Did Len Testa break out what he thought was spent at Disney World? Because I think he was talking about, like, 17 billion, but like 5 of that was cruise ships, because he was talking about it on the Disney Dish, right? So
yes.
His 17 billion was for Disneyland Cruise at Disney World. Iger specifically said 17 billion over the next 10 at Disney World specifically.
From my understanding, the way he did it was he looked at how much was spent over the last 10 years and kind of took out, we know X was for each cruise ship.
Okay.
And then they said this much is left for the parks. And then he approximated, because based on number of parks and hotels, he said, let's assume 2/3 of that was at Florida, 1/3 to California. and that's how they came out with about 1.4 billion a year. So that's for Florida.
Now, when I don't know how investors do this. So these saying $17 billion over the next 10 years. I'm assuming that's $17 billion in today's dollars, which is whatever inflationary number it is after 10. So like we're saying $17 billion from today on next 10 years, but in 10 years, it might be $24 billion in 2023 money.
Yeah,
Tesla went down.
Yeah, Len Testa assumed, I guess, maybe conservatively went the other way. But yeah, that's true. If you're saying, look, we're going to invest this much now, that might actually be more in the future. Because
right, that's my only point of contention with Len Testa. But regardless, the point was
roughly, if we look back on the last 10 years, that's probably a decent gauge for the amount, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but kind of in the ballpark of what can get done in the next 10 years.
Yes.
Which the first reaction is like, oh, well, that kind of puts a little cold water on things. And, everyone thinks 17 billion. Oh my God, we could build so much with that. Oh wait, but they haven't really built anything recently. That's all that's going to get. But this is where you actually have to think about what they did, and remember that there were years before COVID when they actually did get a lot of things done.
A lot done.
So Jason actually put together a whole big spreadsheet with more of the granular detail of like different hotels and stuff like that. But at the highlights, here's some of the things that got built over the last 10 years. Roughly 10 years ago is when they were finishing up New Fantasyland. So that's when they did Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and that sort of thing. All of Pandora.
Well, let's remind people what actually New Fantasyland was, because we might have some new Disney fans that just assume Fantasyland was always like that. So you've got Dumbo the Circus, Little Mermaid, Tales with Belle, the Ariel Meet and Greet, Gaston's Tavern, Be Our Guest, new restaurant. That's also includes Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, but that came in a little bit later after that. So it was a complete revision of Fantasyland. And prior to that, like Nemo.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Was the big thing. It was there, but that had been closed for a while. So there kind of
wasn't. That's what my point was.
There wasn't a lot there. I think there was like Pooh's Play Hut and stuff like that was taken down, and then obviously for the circus area, they took down where Mickey's area was with his houses and stuff like that.
Right. All right. Sorry for derailing, but it was a pretty major advancement at the time.
Yes. So I think that finished up, roughly 10 years ago. Then you had all of Pandora, Galaxy's
That was 2017.
Galaxy's Edge. You had Toy Story Land. Then you had some individual rides like Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Tron, which obviously isn't quite done yet, or actually just opened, sorry, Frozen Ever After. Then you had some new and replacement hotels and DVCs, such as the Riviera, Grand Destino. They also did a lot of, converting rooms at the Grand Floridian and stuff like that. The Galactic Star Cruiser was new. The Skyliner travel system was new. Disney Springs, as in current form, happened in the last 10 years. And then this, the Skyliner, I know Len Testa didn't mention it. The other one that you brought up, Jason, that's a big thing, is the whole like Magic Band, Fast Plus, Genie Plus, like infrastructure, whether you like it or not, that was like $2 billion or something. Like
that's a major investment,
financial investment. So that, excuse me, so that goes part into it. So that's kind of a lot of stuff. And then obviously we currently have, Tiana's Bayou Adventure being worked on, finishing up Epcot and the Moana, and we know that they're doing the DVC at the Polly's. So that's currently being worked on.
I mean, like a lot has happened, obviously, in the last 4 years. Let's call it 3 years, in the post-COVID era, or COVID and so if you take out the COVID years, let's say COVID never happened. Going back to 2017, every single year you got a brand new land with an e-ticket attraction at Animal Kingdom, then 2 in a row at Hollywood Studios, where you have Toy Story Land and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And then if COVID never happened, you would have gotten a major overhaul at Epcot. And I guarantee you they had plans for growing Magic Kingdom as well, that would have been like probably the next park in rotation for we probably would have seen major announcements in one of the D23s in the last 3 years because of that. So sometimes you need to have perspective. Like it's tough, like with Disney and all the nonsense and the whole Chapek and COVID closing and opening up. And over the last 3 years, we've been seeing with the DCI that things have slowly coming back to normal, but we're still talking about things reopening and things still coming back. So that's put a lot of weight on Disney fans waiting for big things. Like right now, Moana, I can't wait for Moana to open. It's a bunch of fountains and greenery. I mean, it's not like, in 2019 that wouldn't have been a major announcement.
Yeah, that was
So
supposed
we're-
to be a small part of the overall Epcot thing.
Right.
It's just now that's kind of like the final thing being worked on.
So, I mean, like, I think we need to gain some perspective. Right up to COVID, they were investing heavily at Walt Disney World. So, with that being said, we've got Magic Band. We're not going to have. So, we're going to look things going forward, right? So, you're about to talk about some of the stuff at the Blue Sky. So, before you do that, setting the stage, right? We're not. We already have all the Magic Band Plus, Genie Plus, individual Lightning Lane infrastructure in place, right? There should not be any plans for a major overhaul in the guest experience arena, I would imagine, right? Because we have all this stuff that's being released. So they're not reinventing Magic Bands or Fast Pass Plus systems. That's done. So that infrastructure is completely in there and not going to be part of the money that they're spending. So I want us to focus on, when we're thinking about what they could add, they were adding lands almost every single year leading up to COVID. So with that being said, what about the Blue Sky stuff at D23?
So I started trying to lay out everything that's either being worked on or we think is coming, and sort of how that would correspond to something that was done in the last 10 years. So for example, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, that overhaul, call that the equivalent of Frozen Ever After. Finishing Epcot of Moana, call that the same as, finishing up New Fantasyland. The Poly DVC that they're working on, call that the equivalent of building the Riviera. And obviously everything's a little, it's not going to be exactly 1-to-1, but just to kind of say, okay, this is roughly that, roughly this. Some will be a little more, some will be a little less.
I would probably compare the Poly to the Grand Testino Towers rather than the Riviera, because Riviera was a whole new resort. The Grand Towers was, anyway, I'm quibbling here.
Exactly. I figured we would.
Okay,
That's why I was trying to put out that.
Right,
so what about all that Blue Sky stuff that they talked about at D23? So prior word was, it seems like the stuff planned for Animal Kingdom was more or less greenlit, at least the Moana part. And so we'll say that they'll get that done and they'll do something with Dino Land. And so I'll say we'll call that the equivalent of Toy Story Land.
That's fair.
Now the interesting stuff, beyond Big Thunder Mountain. And so recently, and why we're kind of putting all this together, as Jason mentioned, some content providers, both Mickey Views and then DSNY, who I'll get to in a minute, recently this week put out videos about Beyond Big Thunder Mountain, what they're hearing, what they think it could be, and how it could fit together. So Mickey Views was a little bit more about kind of piecing together rumors he's hearing and that sort of thing. And then DSNY gets more into like logistics and actually fitting things in. So just for those who haven't seen it, Mickey Views said what he's hearing is that there's going to be a New Orleans Square that's going to replace Frontierland. So Frontierland is going away. Liberty Square will extend a little bit more. And then once you get to where the Country Bears are, that will become New Orleans Square and things will be made over. So Country Bears isn't going away. It's just going to get a complete overhaul to fit in more with New Orleans themes, probably playing jazz music or something like that. Pecos Bill will get rethemed, blah, blah, blah. Big Thunder Mountain is then going to become part of a new land. So New Orleans Square will stop at where Tiana's is. He called it a desert-themed land, which I think is a terrible name because...
Let's go to Desert Land, please.
Yeah. Well, so because he said that'll be Big Thunder Mountain and then the Coco part and the Encanto part. Now, if anyone who's seen Encanto, there is nothing about the desert in Encanto.
No, it's very colorful.
For whatever it was, I think we can all... We're all sure the Imagineers can come up with some sort of cohesive theme that, you're starting in sort of the Southwest California of America, you're going down into Mexico, and then you're going down into Colombia. Like, I think you can kind of come up with a way to make that work. So that would be a new land. And then that beyond that, and then also connecting through Liberty Square, walking past the Haunted Mansion would be where Villains Land would go.
So if you want to picture, go to Google Maps or take a Disney Magic Kingdom map itself. There's an arc between Big Thunder Mountain that goes up and around, like a big rainbow that goes up and around and then connects the other side with the Haunted Mansion, right? And so it goes up kind of where the berm is, where they would have to move some canals around, but there's a lot of space back there for expansion.
Yep. That's where you go if you're taking the railroad. You go out there. So this is all like kind of within that area. And that's where we get into what DSNY did, was they actually went to say, well, let's look at the maps. How could this actually fit in there? And he actually even went to the feasibility study that went into like the Reedy Creek master plan that they put together, because in there every square foot or whatever is deemed whether this is suitable for building on or not, or could be suitable. And he basically said there's an area in that where Jason described beyond Big Thunder Mountain that is zoned as being suitable to build on or could be suitable. That's roughly 17 acres. And just to give you an idea about that, that's roughly the size of all of Fantasyland. And Galaxy's Edge is about 14 acres. So it's a pretty good sized chunk of land.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they shorten the Rivers of America, which they feel like they might have to just to make it easier to get to it from the Haunted Mansion side, that would free up even more land. So there is room there to build things. Now, what could actually fit in there, and how could this tie into the plans that they said at D23? So he actually like took, Google Map screenshots of like the attractions and like the show buildings and like cut and paste them into this area.
For everybody watching and listening, you need to, after you finish watching or listening to our show. Don't stop now, but when you're done, go watch the DSNY. It's actually not just him talking. He's actually did a really good job with the graphics and showing everything. It's worth a watch.
So the Flight of Passage and Navi River combined show building could fit in there. And this could be a Coco themed ride, where they could ride the Alabrejes. I'm probably saying that word wrong, but the fantastical creatures that they ride into the land of the dead. So it could kind of be like a Flight of Passage type ride. Then Remy's Ratatouille adventure show building, that could all fit in there. And that could be the Encanto ride, where the house comes alive, kind of through the trackless ride system, similar to Mystic Manor, if anybody's seen that over at Hong Kong Disneyland. Rise of the Resistance, one of the largest show buildings there, that could fit in there. That would be a large-scale kind of world-building attraction for Villains Land. Then you could still fit Be Our Guest Restaurant, Satuli Canteen, and Docking Bay 7. So that would cover your sort of dining in there. And there would still be enough room for something the size of the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, plus all like the theming and walkways and stuff like that. So all of that could be fit into that area without any issue. So if you think about that, how does that relate to what they got built in the last year? Based on the rides and the attractions, we could call that the equivalent of Pandora, Galaxy's Edge, and Remy's Ratatouille Adventure.
That's probably like a solid like $3.5 billion ish, right?
Especially when you figure if they're going to do anything with the river and stuff like that, like that's not a small thing. No.
So I mean, I'm an advocate for shortening the Rivers of America, kind of making it more of a closed loop rather than a meandering loop at the very top. The one thing I hope is they don't go with, because basically Toy Story Land was a repurposed ride, a spinner, and a roller coaster, right? So you got basically two new rides for the most part. Galaxy's Edge was two massive attractions, but that was it, and all the theming that goes along with it, which was awesome. And then Pandora was big ticket attraction, smaller boat ride with a lot of really cool theming also, but each land was basically two rides. I think for this expansion to be successful, they need to have, I don't think they need two e-ticket attractions like a Pandora and a Rise. They could have one maybe e-ticket attraction in the villains area, make it really cool and fantastical, but then you could add some D-ticket attractions for the Mystic Manor equivalent or the Remy's equivalent, because I want to call those e-ticket attractions,
right?
But you need volume of new attractions, not just like one or like three, right? It should be like 5 attractions in that whole giant area, in my opinion, on smaller scales and stuff like that. So I think that to be successful, they have plenty of room for it. The one curious thing I really have is how do they connect? We were talking about this for an engagement topic, I don't know, like 4 or 5 weeks ago. How do you get the flow of traffic back there? Yeah. Right.
So he did cover that on DSNY as well. And he basically said there would be a pathway that could fit kind of, you go through where the queue for Splash Mountain, which will be Tiana's, and kind of up past the backside of Big Thunder Mountain. And you could go up there, and that would be a reasonable walkway to get into what would then be probably Coco Land. This is where I think why they would need to shorten the Rivers of America, because if you just build like a long meandering path that goes alongside the Haunted Mansion to get up to there without adjusting the river, he said that would be the equivalent of walking from like the security or kind of under the train station all the way until you get to the partner statue. So imagine doing that all walk with not really seeing anything.
Yeah.
So, if you start putting something else where that top bend of the Rivers of America is, that cuts that in at least half, if not more, before you start getting to things. So that's kind of why he feels like they would need to do something with that, because otherwise there's not a good way to get there, and you can't just have one in and out into the area.
Right.
So the last thing I kind of wanted to mention is so if we assume that we kind of got that, roughly equivalence of what was built in the past, for the list that we had, that still leaves something the equivalent of Cosmic Rewind, Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, Tron, excuse me, Grand Destino Tower, the Skyliner, Disney Springs, the Galactic Star Cruiser, and any technological updates if there needs to be. So all that would be on top of everything that was presented at the Blue Sky, and that would still be sort of the equivalent of what they did in the last 10 years.
So we got to take some sub-$1 billion number out for like the Lake Nona stuff, because they're definitely going to move a lot of office support, Imagineering, all the other ancillary stuff that are going in that area. So that's going to be a chunk of the money, right? But again, that's not, I don't think that's north of $1 billion. That's probably maybe like a $200 to $300 million project for like infrastructure, because it's just office space and maybe studio space and technology spaces, that type of thing. But it's not massive dollar amount type of things, I don't think, anyway. So does that lead us to Fifth Gate? Because we're going to talk about that later on. I don't think there's money for a Fifth Gate unless that's the only thing you do after this, right? Because I would imagine the Beyond Thunder Mountain, the Animal Kingdom stuff comes within the next 4 years, 5 years. Like, if we say, was it 2025 for Epic Universe? And I think there's no point in competing with Universal in the launch of this huge new park, right? It's going to happen. Disney knows they're going to take a hit that year. It's a brand new giant park, right? You can't be like, well, instead of going to Epic Universe, come see our new whatever attraction. That's a waste of marketing, right? So instead of trying to compete, I think you try to stunt the amount of people that leave your bubble for Universal, right?
Yep.
So
or you try to get some of those people that have never been to the area but are coming for Nintendo Land or whatever like that, and say, hey, while you're here, we also have some cool stuff too.
Right. I mean, that's a lot of, that would probably be a lot of first timers. So you can kind of do your own normal marketing type of stuff for it. Right. So I think more importantly, you need to be ready for 2026 when the newness of Epic Universe, not that that's going to wear off, but the marketing shine is going to wear off, and probably after the first year.
And all you need to be from the bloggers and bloggers.
Exactly. Right. So that's people are still going to want to go, obviously, but now there's going to be new space for like, okay, Epic Universe just opened up this awesome park. Now we've got the expansion of Magic Kingdom, the biggest expansion since the opening of the park. And, you can hear all the hype already at this point, right? So I think expanding Magic Kingdom at that point, I think Animal Kingdom should come faster, but I don't know how fast they can open up a bunch of stuff. And then I think you don't get a fifth gate, but I think you slowly start expanding everything else in there. I think they should relax on all the hotel space. I mean, obviously, what did the 10-year plan with the RDIC is? It was like 20-something thousand new hotel rooms or something silly, but it was big, right? Do they need more hotel space? Because they're still trying to fill it now. The only thing I could see Disney spending, so the question is, would we be happy with this over the next 10 years? I think major expansion, all the Blue Sky stuff, I think the expansion of Epcot and the revitalizing of Epcot continues. Hollywood Studios needs more, obviously. And then Animal Kingdom needs a nighttime show and probably one or two small expansions outside of the Moana and Zootopia, whatever it might be, type of stuff. But I think Disney needs to get away from DVC unless that's really making them so much money. There's no backlog of it. Because aren't they still trying to sell like Copper Creek stuff and Riviera at this point?
Riviera, and I think there's still, is there even Animal Kingdom or something? There's definitely still a lot of inventory, and I know they're obviously going to have the Poly coming on soon, which that'll be
that'll sell out.
And they just have, I mean, I didn't cover it in the news, but they just announced like the price point for over at Disneyland, the new DVC there. So there's
the new hotel there.
There's definitely so long story short, I'm sure in the next 10 years they'll build something, but it's not like they need with something coming every year just because they need more inventory.
Well, I'm looking at this the spreadsheet I put together. It was basically every other year there was a new DVC project, because the last one was in 2019, and then 2020, the beginning, they were announcing, Reflections, right? There was going to be the next one, that which had been, a year after that. So it was like they were adding every other year. I think, because I was listening to the Diz Unplugged from a week ago today, and they were talking about a lot of the Universal hotels and stuff like this. I think Disney, if they want to start attracting, like, the middle class again type of thing, there needs to be probably a significant large size moderate hotel that can accommodate larger families, more moderate suites, I guess, so you can sleep 6 to 8 versus getting 2 different rooms or anything else like that, and price it at, like, instead of spending, I don't know, what are 2 moderate rooms, like $700 a night type of thing, pricing it at maybe $500 a night, maybe slightly above the family suite of Art of Animation, that type of thing, and kind of doing like a Homewood Suites type of thing. I think that would sell out quite a bit. So I think that's where I would be happy if Disney started engaging in that type of stuff rather than more deluxes, more DVC. But if they could do some of these things and then surprise us with maybe something else, I think I would be happy. Is there anything on this list that you would want to see more of, or would you be sad? Because we're not going to be satisfied with just this expansion in 3 years. We're going to want more after we've seen it and go through it, right?
Yeah, I think as long as they keep sort of doing some new stuff, and like I said, that still leaves, Guardians and Tron, like those are some pretty big things. They might not be entire lands, but as long as there's something else new comes by then in DHS, and then maybe they'll be ready for the next round of updates to Epcot. So I think if this is the major stuff over the next 10 years, but then still some additional things in the other parks not mentioned, I think that's good.
Do you need a new land at one of the parks every 18 months to be happy? Because that's what we were getting in the last decade.
Yeah, see, I think that's almost, I don't think you need a new land every 18 months. I think maybe every other year a new land, and then the off year you get a ride but not a land or something.
So not 18 months, but every 24 months. You're going to stickler me on 6 months.
I don't know. I guess
I just hope there's no more
because if you go more than that, like every 3 years or something, then that's probably, because in the decade you're only getting 3 lands, right? Like that's probably not enough. So
we're thinking in the aspects of Disney fans that are going all the time, not Disney families that go maybe twice in their whole lifetime, right? That type of thing. But yeah, I think Disney needs to be more sustaining. I think they chase the streaming. Well, we talked about this. They chase the streaming tiger. They caught the tail. It's not making money. It's going to be profitable, but not like what Wall Street likes. Then all the Wall Street's like, oh, by the way, your parks are making tons of money. Why don't you focus on that? They're going to chase whatever Wall Street is kind of hinting.
I think it just got like a negative view of everything because when COVID happened, Disney kind of shut everything down and didn't work on it while Universal was finishing Hagrid's and finishing Velocicoaster and stuff like that. So I think it kind of got like that, a black eye for doing that. But you're 100% right. From before that happened, there was new stuff coming every single year, where if you were an annual visitor, you always had something significant new to see every single year.
I think I'm just looking over our 10-year lifespan. So if you go back 10 years in 2012, you had New Fantasyland to look forward to. That was a major reinvestment into Magic Kingdom. So that was super exciting to go kind of check out. The next year, FastPass Plus was launched, and you probably a little bit of Fantasyland kind of bled over into the 2013. 2014, you have Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Path of the Jedi that kind of opened up, and a lot of the other stuff that was the Festival of Fantasy Parade was 2014, so brand new parade for everybody to see. The year after that, the Star Wars Launch Bay opened, right? So that was kind of a major addition to Hollywood Studios, let alone Disney Springs being the whole new thing experience. And then after that, not much happened in 2016, but in 2017, Happily Ever After, Rivers of Light,
2016,
Pandora.
You got Frozen Ever After. I mean, that was a pretty popular ride.
It was. That's true. But to me, that was more of a retrofit of a ride. Maybe, I don't know if you're building a vacation just for Frozen Ever
but I know
After,
when we were going down in that year, that was a priority to do.
Sure. Okay. No, I mean, well, again, Frozen at the time was massive, right? So but again, 2017, you had brand new nighttime spectaculars. Pandora, right? Yeah. So that was a major year. Pandora was the most popular ride up until the pandemic, right? And then in 2018, you had Toy Story Land. I remember going in 2017 and be like, Toy Story Land opening next year. Why don't we go? And then, we bought a house. And then the next year was Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And that base was basically opened up not too far behind the pandemic, and you still had Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway opening like 5 months later in the same park. So you had major reasons.
I don't know. Maybe
like,
we got spoiled, right? Like,
I mean, we did. Maybe we did because what were we asking? Like, would you plan a trip to go see Tron? No, I wouldn't. But like, because we were planning trips between like 20
every year we got a new land, like,
a huge reason to go down, right? New restaurants, new attractions, not just another roller coaster that lasts 45 seconds. So I mean, like, I think that's why our expectations were so high, and why we were so disappointed with just kind of minor updates. But it's think
kind of interesting because like it just felt like from 2020 through 2021, 2020, we didn't get that much. I'm putting it down there, but if instead it was kind of spaced out, where like Pandora, then a year off, then Toy Story Land, then a year off, then Galaxy's Edge, and like kind of some of the stuff we had in the last few years was fit in there, it probably would feel better than having all that stuff at the beginning and then feeling like maybe we didn't get as much the last few years. But there's plenty. Like if the last time you went was 2016 and now you're going back, there's so much new stuff, right? Like,
well, I mean, just imagine. Okay, yeah, COVID, everything else. Let's say you went back in 2016. Okay, I'll put it in my context of my life, right? I went in 2015, right? I got to see Wishes. It's my first adult family trip or trip with my kids in 2015, and brand new experience, reliving it after a childhood of going. And then let's say I didn't go, right? Because then my son was 18 months. I wanted him to be a little bit older, and then we had my third child, and we wanted her to get a little bit older, right? I didn't turn into an uber Disney fan where I wanted to go every 6 months, right? So, okay, we go back in 2020, 2021, right? That's our big trip. My daughter's 3. We wanted to get one last trip until she's, she's basically free to go into the parks. Maybe two years plus, whatever that metric is, like 2 years, 11 months.
11 months. There you go.
Exactly. That was going to be our last trip. I remember the one that got canceled. I was so angry. That being said, if we went down, being like, okay, it's been 2015. We have a new awesome fireworks show. We have a full day at Animal Kingdom to check out Pandora. We have a full day, 2 days probably at Hollywood Studios, so we can experience Toy Story Land and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And probably Path of the Jedi still would have been there, that I couldn't do because my kids were too young the first time I went in 2015. And then, you've got Lightning McQueen in it. Then we have the Epcot stuff. And there's just so much in the space of 6 years that's just like, it's a brand new place at that point. So again, yes, I think we were spoiled. And I think when we live inside the bubble as Disney fans, we forget to take a step back and look at the arc of what was added to the parks over the last 10 years. And again, even in our own reality, we still had massive improvements at Epcot. And I still probably think Mary Poppins would have gotten canceled anyway because no one liked the new movie. But like, I think we would have gotten a crazy amount of experiences at Epcot, that stuff that got canceled. So I am extremely optimistic about the future of the parks. We just need to kickstart that and start bringing that excitement back. And that's just going to be delay to get that on board because Iger just got back. I think he wants to leave a legacy at Disney World that's been kind of tarnished by him running away right before the pandemic and kind of that whole thing. So I think he's going to want to leave his mark on Florida with a lot of this stuff, in my opinion. So we'll see. I'm optimistic though.
All right.
Are we done?
3? I think we're done with that. So
okay, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. So
that
was the awkward transition to the top 3.
I thought that wrapped it up well. So
okay, so all right, so top 3. In talking about this, if you notice, none of us talked about a 5th gate, right? So I think they could easily spend, I don't know, $10 billion on a 5th gate, and I think there's room in that budget for that for the most part, because I think all the expansion stuff that we talked about probably would be like maybe $6 billion over the course of a couple of years. You could be building a 5th gate with $10 billion, I think, easily. Maybe not easily, but you can. But the top 3 reasons why we shouldn't add a 5th gate. Next week, we're going to talk about our top 3 reasons why we should. But today, it shouldn't because we didn't talk about it. Phil, why don't you go first? What are your top 3 reasons why we should not should not add a fifth gate to Walt Disney World.
All right. So I will say I think your number one reason is probably the number one reason, but I tried to think of different things.
Oh, should I go first then? Because you're
No, it's all right.
reaction to
It's all
my
right.
three. Okay.
It's all right. So at the end of the day, I think no matter how many parks, there's still only going to be Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
So you're always still going to have that issue of that being the park everyone wants to go to, seeing the castle, and so unless the fifth gate is a mirror of Magic Kingdom,
Which it won't be.
which it won't be, you're still going to have that challenge. Number two, I think 4 parks feels good for a family that goes down for maybe a week. Like in August, we're going down for a week and we want to have an off day, so we're doing 4 park days. We hit 4 parks. If there's, even if you get a 5-day or 6-day parks, there's some parks you're definitely going to want to spend more than 1 day at. And I think just as you start adding more parks, you can't do everything like all your favorites at the other parks because there's just not enough time to get to all the parks. Even if you have Hopper, then it takes more time and stuff like that. So I just feel like when you start adding more parks, you're going to have to start saying like, well, are we going to skip one of the other parks? Or is there some park that we'd like to get to twice? We're only going to get to once, that sort of thing. So I think it makes planning a trip a little more challenging. And then the third reason I came up with was, just that they're still challenged to staff certain areas of the parks they have. Adding a 5th gate, there's so much more staffing needs that come with that beyond just saying adding capacity elsewhere, because you have more security, more parking like attendants, more security,
maintenance,
more
blah, blah, blah. Yep.
maintenance, more like people to run the EC rentals. Like all the things that you only have one of in each park.
Not to
you need
mention
more of
Epic
that.
Universe just sucking in all the other
Exactly.
potential people that could get jobs down there too.
So that was the third reason, was I think it would make it that much harder to staff it.
Yep. So my top 3, just to kind of piggyback on it because it's all the same flavor. My number 1 reason is all the existing parks need capacity. I don't think I get value for my money spending $100 a person to get into Animal Kingdom, because I can get there at 11 and leave at 5, and I've been there for 5 hours and I've done the whole park. Right. I think every single park needs to be able to, if you really wanted to, you could spend 12 hours in the park and maybe get everything done and feel like you had a long, full day. And that includes meals and everything else. I think there should be a reason why in your planning of your vacation that you're tempted to go to the park for 2 days and maybe only spend a reasonable 5 to 8 hours in the park, right? Not 12 hours or open to close, and still be able to do something different, right? You shouldn't be able to complete a whole park in 5 hours, in my opinion. I wouldn't like the increase of traffic on property because you're adding a 5th gate. That's a whole nother bus route that you have to go. So there's just more buses, more buses. Not to say that there isn't you don't get into a traffic jam of buses, but it just makes everything more congested, in my opinion. And then just to piggyback on exactly what you said about, having 4 parks being a nice, good number, it adds complexity to your vacation, right? So how do you handle 5 parks? Is it you go to the new park 2 times, but then all of a sudden you only have time for Magic Kingdom? If you have let's say you have 5 park days, right? Let's say in your week down, you typically don't go to a park on your day that you're traveling home because you're packing and whatever. And if you do go, you're going in for an hour or 2 before you head to the airport, type of thing. So you do. So if you're going down for a week, that's, you don't want to jam 5 park days in 5 days. You might want to take a day off. We're learning our lessons slowly, or at least we're saying we are. It depends on how we execute that. So do you add like an arrival day park? Is that like something that's useful to you? Because we're not getting half day tickets. We can't buy one of those as part of a package. So like adding the complexity to your vacation where you feel like you have to sacrifice something, that's never good, if feeling like you have to sacrifice things. When I went, we planned our weekend getaway. When we surprised the kids driving down, that was 2 park days. Do you know how hard it was for me to decide how to do 2 park days and, pick the 2 parks that we were going to? And it's tough. And if that was only a quick getaway. So I kind of said, okay, we're only going for 2 days. We're going to have the most fun for 2 days. Right. Versus I'm going for a full-blown Disney vacation. I am giving something up, right? And typically you want to do Magic Kingdom 2 days for a long trip type of thing. So yes, complexity is would be a nightmare on that. And I don't think Disney ever wants people to think that this is their once-in-a-lifetime trip, because it is so expensive, that they felt like they weren't able to see everything that they wanted to see. And it's not like it's an easy trip. You're like, oh, we'll just come back in 6 months or next year type of thing. Because that, for most people, Disney World is not a destination for your once a year vacation. It's more of a grander thing. So I don't think that's why Disney ever adds. They might add another the only thing I could see them adding is like a smaller type of theme park where it's like a singular land that's like maybe a combination of like an indoor park and maybe a water park type of thing, kind of like a Great Wolf Lodge ish type of thing, but maybe a little bit more expansive, where it's a combo hotel and resort or theme park, or it's a smaller theme park with more indoor, like kind of like a spin-off of like the island at Disney, at downtown Disney back in the day, Discovery Island or Pleasure Island, excuse me, something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's smaller in scope, but which we would count more in this tier of like a water park type of thing. That's the only thing I can see as like a quote unquote fifth gate type of thing. Okay, let's end the show with our DBC engagement. This was your idea, Phil, and you had some really cool ideas here. I try to backfill with some of my reasoning, and it's basically designing a throwback after hours event at Walt Disney World. What park, what food, what entertainment, what characters, and this is basically you're just pulling anything out from the yesteryear and trying to, how are you driving nostalgia in an after hours event?
Exactly.
So what did you come up with?
Yeah, so this was announced for Disneyland. They're doing these, and you can see some of the photo ops they're doing. They're bringing out characters like Mother and Father from the Carousel of Progress, and like super rare characters and things like that. So it made me think we should have something like that at Walt Disney World in Florida. And like
Disneyland has all the coolest stuff.
I know they got some cool things. So for me, obviously, I would do it at Epcot. And so shows I would do at it would be Tapestry of Nations and
That's a good one.
Illuminations would happen. Reflections of Earth. Some characters that I'd like to see. I want to see Smart One, the robot. I want to see Dreamfinder and Figment. And I definitely want to see Mickey and the gang in their rainbow space outfits that they used to have.
100%.
Lots of photo ops I'd like to see from some of the Begone attractions, things having like the cars from the World of Motion or the omnibus that used to go around World Showcase. Obviously, they'd be playing a lot of the classical music all throughout the night. I'd love if they did an overlay to Living with the Land, throwing it back to Listen to the Land, where they actually had a cast member who rode on the boat with you and actually did a live, kind of like the Jungle Cruise or the Safari, but it was on the boats for Living with the Land, and bring back the old song there. For food, I struggled for a little bit. I actually went back like, what was classic food in the 80s in Epcot? And it was like, there was nothing good.
Yeah.
So my thought was kind of do like a best of the fests and sort of have like,
I like
what
that
are some of
idea.
everybody's like favorites from the various festivals and kind of have that out there. So that's kind of how I would do it. Like all the nostalgia feeling from Epcot, but some of the best food and wine that they've had over the years. And I did want to, we haven't done a DBC recommends in a while, but some of the information I got from this, I found a website called Disney Travel Babble or My Travel Babble. And they go in there through the details of how do you plan a private party or private event at Disney. And they did like an 80s themed Epcot dessert party there. They did a tiki party in the universe of energy underneath the dinosaur animatronics. So they've done some really cool things, and they have a lot of the information for how much do things cost. So if you want to have a party, here's kind of like the different places you can do it. How much does it cost if you want to have a character there, and how it varies by characters. So just lots of information, like useful information that at least I found super interesting. And some ways it's kind of interesting that you can do it for not crazy money, but it can get real expensive real fast when you start
well,
adding
yes,
things. So.
Disney's okay with adding on cost to everything for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was a good one. I mean, like Epcot is probably the one park that's changed the most, right? And it's what, 40 years old, and the only other park really you could do this at Disney World is Magic Kingdom, because Hollywood's Animal Kingdom is what? It's getting to be 25?
Yeah, this year is 25.
Hollywood Studios is what, 30?
A little over 30, yeah.
It was 30 last year, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that long enough for like a quote unquote throwback? I mean, Hollywood Studios maybe throwback to the old MGM days type of thing, but most of the stuff is kind of the same theme-ish. I don't know anything that kind of anybody's nostalgic for like 1990s MGM Studios other than the tram tour type of thing. So you have to be at Magic Kingdom, but Magic Kingdom is one of the least changed parks, other than maybe New Fantasyland and some new coats of paint type of stuff. Because it's built to be timeless, I think, right? So it's kind of hard to do with throwback unless you want to bring back individual attractions, but I don't know how you could do that for like a party. So just to kind of put an answer in here, I thought like, bring character and cast member costumes that, have had changes over the years. So like maybe costumes from like the 80s and then costumes from the 90s and costumes from the 70s, like a couple different versions of Mickey, even though Mickey can't be in the same place, whatever, but maybe like you could do costume changes. Like here's the Mickey of the 70s. Like I think that might be kind of fun. Maybe you could do multiple fireworks shows. You could do like a mishmash of all the different shows from over the years. That might be kind of neat to do. Maybe offer different parades, like nighttime parades. Maybe you could have like ticket deal raffles, like today the first 500 people that buy, or the 500 random people will be selected to buy for the party price would be the ticket from like 1972. That's what you pay, and it's like kind of like a little, you try to buy tickets at full price and surprise, you're paying 1975 prices and stuff like that, or whatever it might be. That might be fun. And the only other thing that I thought might have been a good idea, but I don't know what I would actually do, is like the Disney Spring stuff. So you have like the Adventurers Club and, all the other kind of, different things
like
from
Pleasure Island throwback. Yeah.
But again, is that enough to draw people, or is it just, here's just more bars and some fancy lights? I don't know. But I couldn't go over your Epcot one, because I think that's the one thing that has most nostalgia that has been, I don't know, lost, if you want to say that. It's been, a lot of it's been changed. So my throwback would be basically what the 50th should have been at the Magic Kingdom, probably an after hours event. But I don't know how you can do that all in one thing. We have a couple pulled from the community, so why don't you go over them? They have much better ideas than me.
Yeah. So Gina said use some sort of pavilion. She said the events pavilion at Epcot. I'm assuming she means like the World Showplace area, and that you could go into different rooms to relive attractions from the past. So in one room could do like the Osborne family lights.
That's
Another
cool.
room could have like POV videos of like Body Wars and Horizons and
Some VR type
space.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like virtual reality things for Alien Encounter, the backlot tour and stuff like that. So some way of kind of letting people use, it's an interesting idea to use kind of like an enclosed space to kind of like have a facsimile of what these experiences were like, to provide that. So I think that was an interesting idea. Could probably do that all the time and charge like separate admission.
Oh yeah, of course.
You don't have to do it at an after hours event. TL Madden said you'd want to have some old characters that would have only existed in the 70s or 80s.
Friend of the show, TL Madden now.
Yeah, he said a big time popular YouTuber, TL Madden. He also said bring out photo ops for old ride vehicles, like the Mr. Toad's vehicles and stuff like that.
Oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah, I like that.
And his idea was like put it like where the ride used to be. So put like the Toad ride vehicle out front of Winnie the Pooh. Put like a Nautilus, if they could still have one, in front of like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, like where the
pull it out of
attraction used to be
Caribbean
or something like that. Yeah. And then he said bring back like the Penny Arcade and stuff like that. So all like, and I like this idea. All the things they used to have, like for people who have only recently been to Walt Disney World. Back in the day, Main Street wasn't like one big store that you could walk the whole length of. It was all individual stores. There was like a magic shop. There was like, the Penny Arcade. So he's kind of saying bring back that element, which I think is a pretty cool idea. And then Yulin suggested bringing back old entertainment that's gone away. So she's talking about the Citizens of Hollywood, Citizens of Main Street, the Trolley Show, 4 for $1, Mulch, Sweats, and Cheers, the Comedy Warehouse. Some of the folks from Pleasure Island and stuff like that. And kind of saying hosted at Hollywood Studios, because they could do the improv at the Hyperion, and they could do, say, 4 for $1 over at the Beauty and the Beast. Like, it has a lot of theater spaces where they could do a lot of these shows. And then she also said bring back the Stars and Motorcade Parade that they used to do, where there was a celebrity of the day that would have a motorcade come down, like a C-level celebrity that would be the celebrity of the day.
How about, like
stuff like that.
This should not be a throwback idea. This should just happen.
What they do. This is just what they
come
should
on.
do.
Yes. I don't want to pay for this. This should be part of the parks, all of them. I like it. It's a good idea. We don't have a DBC engagement specifically set up, but the one I wanted to promote is, let's get talking why these shouldn't. So our top 3 question today was, why shouldn't you add a 5th gate? And I think that is our DBC engagement for this week.
It's a good idea. So if you have other ideas for why they shouldn't build a 5th gate, let us know.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll set that up starting this week, and obviously we are late. That you're listening to this. This is coming out on a Wednesday. That's tomorrow, correct? We're recording on a Tuesday.
Yep.
Some personal things prevented us from recording on Sunday and Monday night, so here we are on Tuesday. So some of this news, hopefully, is not too stale after other kind of nonsense that's going around that we're not talking about. That being said, thank you everybody for listening. Make sure you get on Discord and participate in the community, like and subscribe and all that other fun stuff. We always appreciate your support, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Take care, everyone.